They gave me 5 minutes to erase 6 years of my life. 5 minutes to pack my achievements, my memories, my pride, into a single cardboard box, while my father-in-law, the CEO, watched, like an emperor timing an execution. But what he didn't know was that his countdown wasn't marking my end, it was marking his. The clock on the conference wall glowed 9 a.m. Sharp. Nicholas Harrington's voice cut through the air like a whip. 5 minutes, he said, tapping his Rolex with the precision of a man who believed time bowed to him. After that, security will escort you out. For a second, I couldn't feel my own hands. Then instinct grace drilled from years of survival took over. I smiled. Thank you, I said quietly. Gasps fluttered around the room. Maybe they expected tears, maybe begging. But I'd learned long ago that people like Nicholas only understood composure as rebellion. I opened my drawer and began to pack. One by one, slow, deliberate. 6 years condensed into fragments. A chipped coffee mug from the Henderson Project. A team photo where we all looked exhausted but proud. A flash drive taped under my desk. The silent record of every late night I'd spent saving this company. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and Nicholas's impatient sighs. His voice came again, sharp and theatrical. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Behind him, the city skyline shimmered through the glass walls, an empire of mirrored arrogance. Inside, the executive sat frozen, torn between obedience and conscience. Nia Blackwood, the ambitious understudy Nicholas had been grooming, leaned back in my chair, polishing a perfect nail, as if she were already inhabiting my office, my title, my life. I glanced at her and almost laughed. She thought she'd won. But then, a small movement outside the glass wall caught my eye. Logan Mitchell, my senior systems architect, loyal, thoughtful, a man who still had his daughter's dance recital sticker on his shirt, was standing, laptop bag over his shoulder. His eyes met mine. No words, just a quiet nod. Then Priya stood, then Marcus, then Sarah. One by one, the people I'd led, mentored, believed in rose from their desks. 22 of them. Each step like a drumbeat echoing down the corridor of power. Nicholas's voice faltered. 3 minutes, he snapped. But even he heard it, the tremor. I straightened, resting my hand on the box. I could feel the weight of every sleepless night, every crisis I'd solved in silence while others collected applause. 6 years of being indispensable and invisible. And in that moment, for the first time, I felt light. When I turned toward the door, the reflection in the polished boardroom table stopped me. A woman standing tall, shoulders squared, eyes steady. Not a victim, not anymore. Nicholas was still talking something about policy, about how emotion had no place in leadership. But his words were static now, meaningless noise in a collapsing kingdom. I walked past him, my box cradled in both hands like a flag of surrender that had somehow become a declaration of war. Tom, one of the security guards, stepped forward, uncertain. "Miss West," he murmured. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said softly. "You're just doing your job." The elevator doors opened with a quiet ding. But before I stepped inside, I turned once more. Through the glass, Nicholas stood red-faced, Nia frozen mid-smirk, and the others watching the impossible happen, power slipping through fingers too arrogant to notice until it was gone. When the elevator doors closed, the last thing I saw was the reflection of my team following me out, a silent exodus of loyalty, proof that leadership isn't about title or inheritance, it's about integrity. And as the elevator descended, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding for 6 years. That's how my story began, not with a firing, but with freedom. But if you really want to understand how it happened, you have to go back 3 weeks, back to the Sunday dinner that started it all. The Harrington estate always smelled of wealth and old wood, like history polished with lemon oil. Every Sunday, without fail, we gathered there like obedient actors in a play that had long lost its script. That night, the chandeliers glowed like captive suns. The mahogany table stretched endlessly under silver platters and perfect silence. My husband, Taylor, smiled the way he always did in his father's presence, bright, practiced, empty. I placed my homemade apple pie on the sideboard. 2 hours of lattice work, buttered crust, cinnamon filling. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, looked up briefly from her glass of wine. "Oh, the pie," she said, her tone feather-light. "It's lovely that the staff remembered." She didn't mean staff, she meant me. But I just smiled, because correcting her would only confirm my place at the table as someone who didn't belong. Nicholas raised his crystal tumbler, amber whiskey catching the light. "To another record quarter for Vertex Solutions," he declared, the king of his castle presiding over an audience that never dared interrupt. "We dominate the market because I know how to recognize talent and put it where it belongs." His hand landed heavily on Taylor's shoulder. "This young man's got the fire, a true Harrington." Taylor glowed. His father's approval was oxygen, rare and addictive. Nobody mentioned the Henderson account I'd saved that week, or the Morrison contract I'd resurrected from near disaster, or the fact that while Nicholas was off at his whiskey tastings, I was up at 3 a.m., rebuilding an entire server network. Eleanor's diamonds winked as she leaned toward me, her voice sugar-smooth. "You look tired, dear. Perhaps you should balance your priorities better. Women in leadership often overextend." Her fingers brushed my shoulder, cold, elegant, like touching frost. "I'll keep that in mind," I said softly. But inside, I burned. I'd been up 36 hours straight when she said it, eyes dry, heart pounding from caffeine and quiet fury. I wanted to tell her exhaustion wasn't a flaw. It was evidence of loyalty. But that kind of honesty didn't belong in this family. Instead, I watched the candlelight ripple over the gold cutlery and wondered when I'd stopped being a guest and started being furniture. Nicholas was still talking. "We're expanding East Coast operations next quarter. I'll need people who understand what leadership really means, not just technicians, visionaries." His gaze flicked toward me, a subtle dismissal dressed as philosophy. I smiled politely, the universal response of women who've learned that anger only feeds arrogance. But the real wound came from Taylor. He laughed along with his father's jokes about ambitious employees who forget their place. His hand brushed mine under the table, meant as comfort, but it felt like silence. After dinner, I carried the pie plate to the kitchen myself. The housekeeper, older, kind, met my eyes with quiet understanding. "You made that pie?" she whispered. I nodded. "It was the best thing on the table," she said, and for a moment I almost cried. When I returned to the dining room, Nicholas and Taylor were discussing new hires. Eleanor was pretending to listen. My name didn't come up once. On the drive home, Taylor hummed along with the radio, oblivious. "Dad's really proud of this quarter," he said. "He thinks Nia's been doing great. She's been taking on extra work." I stared at the headlights slicing through the rain. "Nia?" "Yeah," he said. "She's ambitious. Dad says she's management material. Maybe you should delegate more, let her grow." Delegate. That word tasted like betrayal. Because I knew exactly what Nia was doing, copying my systems, shadowing my meetings, smiling too brightly while memorizing everything I'd built. "Sure," I murmured. "Let her grow." Taylor didn't notice the edge in my voice. He never did. When we got home, he went straight to bed. I stayed in the living room, laptop open, screen light washing over the dark room. I rechecked the Henderson files, the project plans, the backups. Something inside me had started whispering soft but certain. Something was shifting. By the next morning, I'd know just how right I was. The first real sign came disguised as praise. "Nia's doing fantastic under your mentorship," Nicholas said one morning in passing, not even looking up from his phone. "She reminds me of you before you burned out." Burned out. Two words that can end a woman's career faster than incompetence ever could. I forced a smile, but something inside me hardened. That night, I pulled up Nia's project access logs. She'd been downloading files from restricted servers. Budgets, client contracts, even my internal documentation, all marked as review materials. She'd also been forwarding herself notes from meetings she never attended, including mine. Still, I told myself it was nothing. She was eager, ambitious, just trying to learn. I'd trained her, answered her endless questions. How do you handle client escalations? What's your redundancy protocol? Who signs off on admin access? I should have seen it then. She wasn't learning from me. She was replacing me. The week everything fell apart started quietly. Monday morning, fluorescent lights humming overhead. the faint smell of coffee and anxiety in the air. Nia arrived late as usual, latte in hand, perfect hair framing her smug little smile. "Morning," she chirped. "Big week ahead." I nodded, pretending not to notice the stack of reports on her desk, mine, rebranded with her name. That afternoon, she popped into my office. "Nicholas asked me to help with the server migration plan," she said, her tone falsely humble. "He said you could use some support." "Support," I repeated. "Or supervision?" Her smile didn't flicker. "You tell me." She left before I could answer, perfume trailing behind her like arrogance in a bottle. By Tuesday, the crisis hit. 40 terabytes of data gone, server corruption, backup failure, total meltdown. My team assembled in the conference room, bleary-eyed but determined. Logan arrived first, still wearing his daughter's dance recital program on his shirt. Priya followed, whispering apologies to her husband over the phone. We worked through the night, lines of code glowing on screens like lifelines, fingers trembling from exhaustion but not stopping. "We're like a weird little family," Marcus said at 2 a.m., his voice thick with fatigue. "Yeah," Sarah replied, typing furiously beside him. "But at least we chose this one." Their words hit me harder than I expected, because in that sterile glass box, surrounded by cables and energy drinks, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: belonging. By sunrise, we'd saved everything. The system was alive. Clients wouldn't even know disaster had come within 3 keystrokes. Nicholas would never know either. That's what I did. I fixed catastrophes so quietly that people forgot they ever existed. Then came the email. It was 11:47 p.m. I was reviewing files when it appeared in my inbox subject line, "Henderson update." Kublim. It was from Nia. Except it wasn't meant for me. "Nicholas," it read. "As discussed, I've successfully salvaged the Henderson situation. The client was thoroughly impressed with my crisis management. I believe it's time to discuss restructuring. She seems overwhelmed. Perhaps fresh leadership would benefit the department." Overwhelmed. There it was again, the narrative being written without me in it. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. My vision blurred. I read it twice. Then again. I felt something cold slide through my chest, not anger, not even shock, just understanding. I forwarded the email to my personal account, evidence, instinct, insurance. And then I sat there in the dark, laptop screen casting pale light across my face, realizing how deeply I'd misjudged them all. Dedication, I thought, had made me invisible. Loyalty had made me disposable. When Taylor came home that night, he didn't notice my puffy eyes or the untouched dinner on the counter. He just said, "Dad's really impressed with Nia lately. She's been taking initiative." I almost laughed. Initiative. That's one word for sabotage. I didn't reply. I just closed my laptop, my decision forming quietly like a storm on the horizon. By the time Nicholas would call his meeting, the one that would end everything, I'd already made up my mind. If they wanted to see me break, they'd be disappointed. Because I was done being their silent engineer. I was about to become their reckoning. The morning it happened, the air itself felt wrong. Too still. Too watchful. When I scanned my ID at the lobby turnstile, the security guard, a friendly man who usually greeted me with small talk about his kids, avoided my eyes. My heels clicked on marble that suddenly sounded louder than usual. The elevator hummed like it was holding its breath. Something inside me tightened. At 6:45 a.m., I reached the 15th floor. The glass walls glowed with the reflection of dawn, but the office felt like a mausoleum, sterile, hushed, waiting. Nia was already in the conference room, sitting in my seat. Her laptop was open to files. I recognized instantly. My department's confidential budget projections. She shouldn't have been able to access them. She looked up with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. "Oh, good morning," she said, voice dripping syrup. "Nicholas asked me to review these before the meeting. You don't mind, do you?" It wasn't a question. And I wasn't stupid enough to answer it. "Sure," I murmured. "Go ahead. I'm curious to see what he thinks you'll find." Her smile faltered for half a second, then returned, polished and plastic. By the time the others arrived, the atmosphere had shifted from awkward to apocalyptic. David Park from finance gripped his tablet like a shield. Margaret Lawson, our legal director, looked pale, fingers trembling as she checked her phone again and again. Even the coffee machine remained silent, a small omen no one dared to mention. At 8 a.m. sharp, I began my presentation. My voice sounded steady, almost detached. Slides clicked, charts glowed, numbers told the truth no one wanted to see. As you can see, I said, our efficiency has increased by 340% this quarter, exceeding every. The door didn't just open, it exploded. Nicholas burst in, face red, suit disheveled, tie crooked. He didn't even sit down. You have 5 minutes, he thundered, slamming his palm onto the polished table. Pack your things and leave. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Coffee cups rattled. Margaret's pen slipped from her hand and rolled to the floor. I'm sorry? I asked calmly. You're finished, he said, voice sharp and gleeful. Your position has been terminated effective immediately. Behind him, I saw Nia lean back, crossing her legs with deliberate grace. My chair, my office, my downfall. But I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't even flinch. Because suddenly, everything became crystal clear. This wasn't spontaneous. This was a script planned, rehearsed, choreographed humiliation. Nia had played the apprentice, Nicholas, the executioner, and everyone else, spectators in a tragedy they couldn't stop watching. 5 minutes, Nicholas repeated, tapping his Rolex. After that, security will escort you. I thought of my grandmother then, her voice, strong and steady, even in her old age. When they expect you to break, that's when you stand tallest. I straightened my shoulders. Thank you, I said simply. He blinked. He hadn't expected gratitude. While he stood there, thunderstruck, I began to pack my things. Each motion deliberate, surgical. The backup drive went in first, then the project files, my chipped coffee mug, the framed photo of my team from the Patterson launch, all of us smiling despite the exhaustion. Margaret's breathing grew shallow. She was realizing, too late, what this spectacle would cost him legally. Public terminations weren't just unethical, they were expensive. 4 minutes, Nicholas announced, but the edge was gone. His voice cracked, his authority leaking through the seams. Then, from outside the glass walls, a small movement caught my eye. Logan, standing by his desk, bag over his shoulder, his expression unreadable but steady. Then Priya rose, then Marcus, then Sarah. And one by one, the others followed. The entire 15th floor shifted in a wave of silent defiance. Chairs scraped, computers closed, bags zipped. Nicholas turned, his face bleaching from crimson to chalk white. What do you think you're doing? He barked. No one answered. The sound of synchronized footsteps filled the room, the rhythm of loyalty, of rebellion, of truth, refusing to stay silent any longer. I picked up my box. 6 years of my life, reduced to a few pounds of cardboard and memories. As I walked toward the door, Nicholas tried one last power play. You'll regret this, he hissed. I met his gaze and smiled softly. I already did, I said. Years ago. The 2 security guards waiting in the hall, Tom and Derek, stepped aside respectfully. Tom whispered, I'm sorry, Miss West. Don't be, I replied. You're just doing your job. When the elevator doors slid open, I caught one last glimpse of the room behind me. Nicholas stood frozen. Nia's smile had vanished. And 22 people, my people, were walking out after me. As the doors closed, I felt no fear, no anger, only clarity. He thought he'd fired me, but what he'd really done was free me. The sunlight outside the Vertex Tower was blinding. I remember thinking it was almost cruel how the world kept shining as if nothing had happened. 22 of us stepped out together, blinking against the glare, our reflections stretched across the mirrored glass of the building we'd just left behind. Someone started a slow clap from the loading dock. I never found out who. But by the time we reached the parking lot, the sound had grown echoing, defiant, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. This is insane, Priya whispered beside me. No, Logan said quietly. This is justice. We stood there a moment longer, not ready to scatter, just breathing the same air, still tethered by disbelief and adrenaline. Then, One by one, we left. The drive home was a blur of red lights and white lines. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing calls from unknown numbers, messages from colleagues, notifications from social media. But I didn't answer. I couldn't. When I pulled into the driveway, Taylor's car was already there. Of course it was. He worked from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays, a luxury his father had given him. I sat in the car for nearly a minute, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the house through the windshield. The same house his parents had helped us buy. The same walls that had once felt like safety now looked like a cage. When I finally went inside, Taylor was waiting by the door, his laptop still open on the kitchen counter, his voice already sharp with rehearsed outrage. "Why are you home?" he asked. "Are you sick?" Then his eyes fell on the box in my arms. "What's that?" "My desk," I said. He blinked, then laughed softly, as if I'd made a bad joke. "Dad called," he said finally. "He told me what happened." I said nothing. "He said you lost it in the meeting, that you were unstable." Started crying. "Security had to." I set the box down on the entryway table, cutting him off with silence. "Is that what he said?" "He said you've been struggling," Taylor continued. "That Nia's been covering for you, that he didn't have a choice." The air between us felt heavier than gravity. I unlocked my phone, scrolled through the endless notifications, and opened the email. The one from Nia, meant for Nicholas. The one where she called me overwhelmed. The one where she stole credit for the Henderson rescue. I handed it to him. "Read this." He read it once, then again. The color drained from his face. His jaw tightened, the same twitch I'd seen in his father during arguments, the family tell that appeared whenever truth cornered them. "When did she send this?" he asked. 3 weeks ago." "You didn't tell me?" "Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "Or would you have said it was a misunderstanding? That your father wouldn't do something like that?" He didn't answer. The silence said enough. "I need to think," he muttered finally, grabbing his keys. I need to think." Taylor. But he was already out the door. The sound of it closing behind him felt like punctuation. Final, sharp, irrevocable. I stood in the quiet house surrounded by the ghosts of my old life wedding photos, holiday memories, and the echo of promises we'd both stopped keeping long ago. I don't remember sitting down, but when my phone rang again, I was already on the couch, staring at the box on the table. The caller ID said, "Unknown number." I almost ignored it. Then something, instinct, exhaustion, fate, made me swipe to answer. "Please don't hang up," came a whisper. It was Margaret Lawson, our legal director. Her voice trembled. "I'm calling from the executive bathroom, the one on 16. Nobody uses it. I only have a minute." "Margaret?" "Listen to me," she said quickly. "Your contract section 12B, the clause about hostile termination. Nicholas never read it. Legal reviewed it 6 years ago when you were hired. He just signed where I told him to sign." I sat up. "What does that mean?" "The humiliation multiplier alone puts your severance at $800,000, but with documented harassment and 22 witnesses." She took a shaky breath. "We're talking millions." Millions. The word didn't even sound real. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because in about an hour, Nicholas is going to realize what he's done," she said. "And when he does, he'll blame me. I've covered for him for 12 years, his temper, his mistakes, everything. But this will destroy him, and I won't go down with him." She paused, water running faintly in the background, maybe to mask her voice. "Meet me tomorrow. Somewhere public. Somewhere he wouldn't go. I have documents you should see. Things that could help us both." Then the line went dead. I sat there in silence, phone still in my hand, trying to breathe. And that's when another notification buzzed through, a screenshot from Dylan, one of my former engineers. A Slack channel, numbered The Exodus. 247 members before Vertex shut it down. Messages filled the screen like a flood. Shock, disbelief, anger. Did that really happen? Did 22 people walk out? What happens to the Henderson project? I scrolled until one message stopped me cold. She didn't lose her job. She took her power back. For the first time in days, I smiled. Because they were right. Nicholas thought he'd buried me. But what he'd really done was plant the seed. It started with a phone call at 2:07 a.m. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, the box of my career sitting like an artifact beside me. The ringtone jolted me awake. "Please tell me you're up," Margaret's voice whispered through the speaker. She sounded unsteady, frantic. "I am now," I said, rubbing my eyes. "Nia destroyed everything." My pulse kicked. "What do you mean everything?" "She tried to access the customer database, wanted to prove she could handle your systems without a transition period. She deleted the primary files, and then God help us ran a recovery program she found online. It corrupted everything." Silence. The kind that hums in your ears when comprehension is too big for words. "The entire East Coast operation has been dark for 6 hours, she continued. "We're estimating at least 14 more before partial restoration. Clients are panicking. Nicholas is screaming at everyone. He threw a laptop." "Of course he did." "How much damage?" I asked quietly. "50 million in immediate losses," Margaret said. "And that's just the start." 50 million. I leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. There was no satisfaction, no smug thrill, just a cold, hollow quiet. Nia had tried to steal my legacy and ended up detonating it. "Margaret," I said, "document everything. Emails, timestamps, every word Nicholas says." "Already on it. I'm making my own insurance policy." When the call ended, I sat there until dawn, watching sunlight creep across the wall. Somewhere in the city, the empire that had humiliated me was burning from the inside. By 7 a.m., my phone was a war zone. Missed calls from former clients, news alerts, messages from my team. Servers down. Nicholas losing it. Nia's crying in the bathroom. And then, one from Logan. "We're coming over." At first, I thought he was joking, but by noon my living room looked like a tech triage center. Laptops everywhere, cables snaking across the floor, coffee cups multiplying by the hour. "Phoenix Digital," Priya announced suddenly, holding up a napkin where she'd drawn a bird rising from flames. "It's dramatic, but so are we." We laughed for the first time since that Tuesday. A shaky, half-delirious kind of laughter that felt like oxygen. Marcus was already setting up domains. "Secured Phoenix Digital, Tech, Org, and IO, he said. "And the socials before Vertex catches on." Sarah was on the phone with clients, her tone smooth and steady. "Yes, we can handle that transition for you. Our infrastructure is independent." Independent. The word felt new in my mouth, heavy, beautiful. Even Logan's 1-2-year-old daughter, Emma, sat in the corner doing homework, glancing up occasionally to watch the chaos. She pointed at Priya's napkin sketch. "Shouldn't the phoenix be facing forward?" We all stopped, looked at her. She shrugged. "It's rising, not looking back." Priya grinned. "She's right." That was the moment I realized we weren't just patching wounds, we were building something alive. Catherine Walsh, the venture capitalist who'd once rejected Nicholas's pitch, called 2 days later. "I heard about your exodus," she said, "and about the meltdown. How's it feel to be on the right side of history?" "I'm not sure yet," I said honestly. "Well, let's make sure you stay there. I'm wiring $3.5 million in seed funding. I want 20% equity and a board seat." I blinked. "You haven't even seen a business plan." "I saw 22 people walk out of a billion-dollar company to follow you," she said. "That's the only plan I need." When we finally found a space, a dusty warehouse that smelled of concrete and possibility, Catherine toured it, heels clicking against the floor. "This is perfect," she said. Priya frowned up at the flickering fluorescent lights. "It's falling apart." Catherine smiled. "So was every company that changed the world." We spent the next few weeks turning that warehouse into something new. Emma painted a crude phoenix on one wall. Logan set up servers from salvaged hardware. Marcus built an internal network. Sarah negotiated 3 new client contracts in a single afternoon. The first was Henderson Corp., the very account Nia had claimed credit for saving. Richard Henderson himself called me. "I heard about what happened at Vertex," he said, "and I heard what you built from it." I braced for corporate courtesy, but instead he said, "We're moving our business to Phoenix Digital, effective immediately." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So I did both. That night, as my team celebrated on the warehouse floor with cheap pizza and borrowed chairs, I looked around at the faces illuminated by string lights we'd strung ourselves. These weren't employees. They were survivors, builders, family. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere again. Nicholas had given me 5 minutes to disappear. I'd turned them into a lifetime. 3 days after our official launch, my phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, investors, former Vertex clients, even competitors pretending to check in. The story had spread faster than a market crash. CEO's daughter-in-law fired in public, 22 employees walk out. Someone had filmed the exodus on their phone. The video went viral overnight. Nicholas's empire was unraveling in real time. That morning, Catherine stormed into our warehouse with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., she said. "Press conference. Every major tech outlet will be there. You ready to tell the world who really built Vertex?" "I'm not interested in revenge," I said quietly. She smirked. "Then call it redemption. It sells better." We spent the next 24 hours transforming our warehouse into something camera-ready. Sarah coordinated logistics. The Morrison twins somehow rigged professional lighting from spare lamps. Marcus printed banners with our new logo, a phoenix facing forward, its wings made of stylized code. When I looked at it, I thought of Emma's small hand pointing at Priya's sketch and saying, "It's rising, not looking back." At 1:45 p.m. the next day, I stood before the cameras in the same navy blazer I'd worn the day Nicholas fired me. 22 of my people stood behind me, not as props, but as proof. "Good afternoon," I began. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. 2 weeks ago, Nicholas Harrington gave me 5 minutes to clear my desk after 6 years of building Vertex Solutions' technical infrastructure. Those 5 minutes taught me everything I needed to know about leadership. That competence threatens the incompetent. That loyalty means nothing to those who never earned it. And that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing a job that never deserved you. The cameras clicked like rain. A reporter from TechCrunch was live streaming. "Phoenix Digital isn't revenge," I continued. "It's proof that integrity outlasts intimidation. That culture beats hierarchy. That teams built on respect don't just survive, they thrive." When I stepped back from the podium, applause broke out, not polite, but thunderous. Across town, Nicholas was holding his own press conference at the exact same time. Margaret texted me updates in real time. He's sweating through his makeup. Nia's beside him, scrolling through her phone instead of listening. He just called the firing a strategic restructuring. A reporter laughed out loud. Someone in our audience gasped as a split-screen broadcast appeared on a nearby monitor. Nicholas on one side, me on the other. On my side, calm, composed, surrounded by my team. On his, red-faced, rambling, alone except for Nia, who looked like she wanted to vanish. The ticker beneath the screen read, "Vertex. Stock down 8%. Investors flee as ex-staff found new startup." By the end of the day, it had dropped 15. That evening, as we celebrated with champagne and takeout, my phone buzzed again. Blocked number. I almost ignored it until instinct told me to answer. "Please don't hang up," came a trembling voice. "Nia." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was her unsteady breathing. "I know you hate me," she said finally. "I don't hate you," I said truthfully. "I nothing you." She swallowed hard. "They terminated me. Strategic differences. No one will hire me. I've been blacklisted. I have rent, student loans, my mom's medical bills. Please, I know what I did. I took credit for your work," I lied. "But, please, I just need one reference. Just one sentence saying I'm not completely useless." I looked around the room. My team was laughing, building something beautiful from the ashes. "Nia," I said softly, "you took credit for saving Henderson. You called me overwhelmed. You smiled while I packed 6 years of my life. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice." She was crying now. "I know, I just please." "You took credit for other people's work," I said. "Now you get to take credit for your own failure." The line went silent except for her quiet sobs. Then the call disconnected. 5 minutes. That's how long it lasted. I timed it. 3 days later, Every outlet broke the news. Nicholas Harrington resigns as CEO of Vertex Solutions. The press release used the usual corporate euphemisms, pursuing new opportunities, grateful for his years of leadership, but the truth was obvious to anyone who'd been paying attention. He'd been forced out. That night, my phone lit up again. It was Eleanor. "May I come in?" she asked when I opened the door. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red, but for the first time in 6 years, her voice was human. She handed me a manila folder. Inside were decades-old documents, board meeting notes, emails, records of the people Nicholas had destroyed before me. His brother, his CFO, his VP of marketing, all of them humiliated publicly, she said. I told myself it was business, that success required ruthlessness, but watching him destroy you, someone who saved him, that broke me. She paused, then met my eyes. You were the best thing that ever happened to this family, and we treated you like a threat. For the first time, I saw her not as the immaculate matriarch, but as a woman chained to a man's ego. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I'm done enabling monsters, she said, and because I want you to have this. She handed me another paper, Nicholas's handwritten resignation letter, quietly leaked to the board by her. Poetic justice, she said softly. He gave you 5 minutes to lose everything. It took you 2 weeks to take everything back. When she left, I stood there for a long time, holding that letter. Not as proof of victory, but as evidence that dignity, once reclaimed, never dies quietly. 6 months later, the warehouse didn't look like a warehouse anymore. The flickering fluorescents were gone, replaced with warm light that made the concrete glow gold. The smell of paint and coffee had replaced dust and failure. The old stain on the floor, our running joke, was sealed beneath fresh epoxy in Phoenix Digital's colors. $75 million. That was our valuation as of that morning. Logan updated it on our celebration board in bright orange marker, grinning like a kid. Emma, his daughter, was in the homework corner, proudly waving her math test. 98%. Priya helped me. We'd become something more than a company. We were a community that worked, ate, argued, and celebrated together. The family we chose instead of the one that tolerated us. As laughter filled the room, the door opened. Taylor. He looked thinner, paler, like regret had been living off him. In his hands were divorce papers. I recognized the legal formatting immediately. Can we talk? He asked. We went to the break room, the one that actually smelled like coffee now. He sat across from me, the papers between us like a border that finally matched reality. I've been in therapy, he said, twice a week for 4 months, learning about enabling, enmeshment, all the things I didn't know I was doing. That's good, I said softly. I should have stood up for you. In that boardroom, at home, everywhere. I should have walked out with you. He exhaled shakily. Instead, I asked you to fix his mess. I chose comfort over courage, and I lost everything that mattered. He pushed the papers toward me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know I see it now. Are you still at Vertex? I asked. He gave a humorless laugh. Nobody's at Vertex. It got absorbed by Straton Corp. They kept the patents and fired everyone else. Dad's name made the deal radioactive. We signed quietly. No anger, no tears. Just acceptance, the calm kind that comes after you stop trying to fix what died long ago. When he stood, he hesitated. I hope you find someone who sees your worth immediately, he said. Not after it's too late. Me too, I replied. After he left, I stared at the empty seat across from me. The silence wasn't painful, it was peaceful. Margaret appeared in the doorway, her expression half smile, half steel. You okay? I'm fine, I said, meaning it. Just closing a chapter. Then you'll like this, she said, showing me her phone. Nicholas's LinkedIn profile. Independent business consultant. Location. A strip mall address. His latest post read, True leaders turn adversity into opportunity. It had 3 likes, 2 from bot accounts and 1 from a marketing spammer. That's sad, I said. That's consequences, Margaret corrected. No one in tech will touch him. Even startups desperate for cheap advice say he's radioactive. I thought of him standing at the head of that mahogany table, Rolex flashing, counting down my professional execution. Now he had infinite time and nothing left to count. Do I feel bad for him? No. Just nothing. He became a cautionary tale I'd never asked to write. That afternoon, we held our weekly all hands. Not in a sterile boardroom, but in our open space, surrounded by plants, whiteboards, and people who actually smiled. The Morrison twins presented their new AI framework. Sarah outlined client growth: 40 employees, 12 major contracts, all won by integrity. Gerald, our chief morale officer, raised his mop like a toast. To second chances, he shouted. The team erupted. I looked at them, every face that had walked out with me that day, and felt the truth settle quietly inside me. Nicholas had given me 5 minutes to pack up my life. But those 5 minutes had built an empire. Freedom hadn't come from revenge. It had come from remembering who I was before they tried to shrink me. And somewhere across town, in that rented office above a tax service, Nicholas was probably refreshing his LinkedIn post for a 4th like. The difference between us wasn't that I'd won and he'd lost. It was that I'd learned what power really is. Not control. Not wealth. Dignity. When you refuse to let small people make you smaller, you rise. And like any phoenix, you don't rise for applause. You rise because ashes are just proof you survived the fire.